Good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yep, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you on a Sunday morning during the college football season. And you know what that means? It's time for the only college football recap show that actually matters. The year season is over video, the weekly video we do every Sunday during the season, where we highlight the list of losers. There's plenty of places you can go to talk about who won, who looked good, all that kind of stuff. That's not what we do here. Nope, we point and laugh for an hour or so this morning, just like we do every Sunday, at the lovable list of losers that the college football world gave us yesterday. Week 11 in the books, 2022 college football season. And guess what? Uncle Lou has copious notes today because we have quite a list. Look at this. 2 stacks of doo-doo here. 2 stacks of doo-doo. Which stack smells worse? Let's see. Well, y'all tell me. Is it stack number 1 or stack number 2? Which stack smells worse, you think? 2 steaming piles over there. Anyway, how's everybody doing? I hope you enjoyed your college football weekend. Another one in the books here. Only 2 weeks left of the regular season, and it's going to be an exciting 2 weeks. We got some conference races that have been clinched. We got some that are still completely up in the air and will be decided over the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk about some of that today, too, at the end of the video. But we're going to start things off like we always do, talking about some losers. And honestly, where do we start? We'll talk about the Heisman list. We'll talk about who won and looked good, who won and looked bad. I'll tell you who the best teams are, all that kind of thing. But, of course, we're going to start with the list of losers. I guess we'll just start here. Man, you broke a lot of hearts, Texas. You broke a lot of hearts yesterday. I hate having to get the Texas helmet is in the worst possible spot. It's the hardest one for me to get to. I wish y'all would stop shitting the bed, Texas, so I'd quit having to take your helmet down and then cover it back up with the Arkansas helmet, because, of course, they own you until further notice. Y'all play coming up, though, so I don't know. Maybe you'll finally beat Kansas and we could take that Kansas helmet off of up top of the Shorthorns. But Texas, what'd you do yesterday? You lost to TCU. Now, TCU's a good team. There's no shame, really, in losing to TCU. I don't know if TCU's a great team. Looks like we might find out, though, because this was the best chance for TCU to lose a game was yesterday. And thanks to Texas, they didn't. They won. And this was an odd game in a lot of different ways. If you've been watching TCU at all this year, then you already know. What's their MO? They get down big in the first half. They come back big in the second half and win, and they give up a ton of points in doing it, right? TCU's had an exciting offense. Max Duggan, Sonny Dykes running the show over there, a new head coach. That's been TCU's MO. Get up big or fall behind big in the first half. Multiple double-digit losing by double digits in the second half in almost every game this year, but coming back and finding a way to win in the end. That's not how it went yesterday. Texas just could not move the ball yesterday on TCU. Could not score. 3 points. Final score 17 to... God, tell me it wasn't 17-3. Okay, you did score a garbage touchdown. 17-10. This was a great game. All joking aside, this was a great game. It just was weird because neither team played like they normally do. Texas has been a first-half team for 2 years in a row. This had a hard time hanging on to leads in the second half. TCU has been a second-half team all year who's been terrible in the first half but come back and won in the second. And it was like the opposite here. TCU actually had the lead at halftime. And I think 3-0 is all it was at halftime. And then we're able to hold on and win 17-10. And this was a big win, not just for TCU, not just for the Big 12, but this had implications and possible ramifications throughout the rest of the college football world, of course, because of the potential impact it could have on playoff rankings and eventual playoff seeding. There are a lot of teams who are rooting against TCU, who are trying to sort of backdoor or sneak their way into the playoffs by avoiding conference championship games, by not winning their division, by getting smoked in the biggest game they played of the year, things like that. And so they're looking at TCU kind of with their fingers crossed, hoping they'll lose. And TCU took a giant poop down all those people's mouth yesterday by beating Texas. And again, look at TCU's schedule. This was their best chance for a loss. Now, TCU's going to have to play, 2 more regular season games. They need to win them. And then they got, of course, the Big 12 championship game. They're going to have a rematch against somebody, maybe Texas. Who else is it going to be? Texas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Baylor. The Big 12 looked a lot better a month ago, really, than it looks now. Oklahoma State and Kansas State looked like they were top 15 teams a month or so ago. Now they can barely win a game. Does TCU have to go 13-0 to get in the playoffs? That's a fair question to ask. If they drop a game, if they're 12-1 but win the Big 12 title, would they still get in? We'll find all those things out. But TCU winning yesterday was not the best case scenario for some other teams that are trying to backdoor and sneak their way into the playoffs. But yeah, those teams had some other help from other teams not named TCU, which we'll talk about in a little while. But TCU somehow keeps finding a way to win. They did it again this past week against lowly Texas. And yeah, unfortunately, we got to start referring to them as lowly Texas again. This is yet another disappointing year from Texas. No matter how you slice it, okay, so you lost by 1 point to Alabama. Whoopity-doo. You've looked like a pretty good team in about half the games you played, and the other half you've looked totally inept, to be honest. It's too much up and down, and that's been a problem with Texas for way too long. Way too long. And I know Sark hadn't been there forever, but he's not a first-year head coach either. You got to get more consistent on both sides of the ball, and that includes Quinn Ewers. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning next year, because Quinn Ewers has looked at times like he's going to be a really, really good quarterback, and then at times like yesterday, not very good. And the whole late 80s wrestler look is really not winning anybody over either, I don't think, that Quinn Ewers has going on. I'm not sure what type of deal he's got going with his barber or whatever, but it's just not a good look to me. Anyway, but TCU, clearly the head of the class in the Big 12. The question is going to be, can they win their next 3 games and go 13-0? Look, no matter what anybody thinks about TCU, me, you, or anyone else, if they're 13-0, they're getting in, period. You can debate whether they get in at the 2, 3, or 4 or whatever spot, but if they go 13-0, they're getting in. That's just a fact. The only question is, what if they're not 13-0? What if they're 12-1? What if they lose next week? And then win their next 2, right? And they're 12-1 with a Big 12 title. The questions are going to be, is that better than an 11-1 Tennessee that didn't win their division or their conference, or either whoever loses between Michigan and Ohio State, right? Those are going to be the questions. And you got some other conferences that are going to be involved in that too. But big win yesterday for TCU. And look, Texas was favored by a touchdown in this game. TCU just gets no respect. I can tell you from the comment section over the course of this season, TCU gets no respect in my comment section. They get no respect on my call-in shows. They get little to no respect in the rankings and the polls. In Vegas, little to no respect either. Texas was a touchdown favorite, a full 7-point favorite yesterday over TCU. TCU goes on the road and gets the win as a 7-point underdog. So, like them, love them, hate them, indifferent towards them. They're 10-0, and if they win their next 3 games, they're going to the playoffs. There is a lot of teams in America that would love to switch places with TCU right now. I don't care what you think about them. There are 125, 126, 127 teams somewhere in that neighborhood out of the 130 that would switch places with TCU right now. I don't care who you're a fan of. If I told you all you got to do is win your next 3 games and you get into playoffs, you'd be happier than a pig in poop. And that's the situation TCU finds themselves in after humiliating the Shorthorn. Yesterday. Let's get this out of the way. This is another weekly friggin' occurrence here. Onto your season is over video. I'm still seeing way too many comments about firing Jimbo Fisher. Look, we get it. Everybody gets it. It's an epic failure and a disaster. There is no debate. You won't find anybody at this point that's willing to take up for Jimbo Fisher. Not even the most diehard Texas A&M fans or Jimbo Fisher supporters are willing to stick their neck out on the line right now for Jimbo Fisher. This is the worst coaching performance in America this year, and no one else is even close. Nobody. This is by far the worst coaching performance of the season across the entire country is what Jimbo Fisher has done at Texas A&M this year. Absolutely unacceptable. Lose yesterday to one of the worst Auburn teams we've seen in a decade. An Auburn team with Cadillac Williams is their coach. Cadillac Williams. Where was this guy at last year? In other words, it's not like this guy is some amazing coach. Look, I like Cadillac Williams. He was a hell of a player. I saw his post-game interviews after the game yesterday. I like what I hear from Cadillac Williams. Great guy. passionate about Auburn, clearly loves Auburn. He's not an elite level coach, and you got out coached by him. This cannot happen. And as bad as Jimbo Fisher is, and yeah, it's been an epic failure and a disappointment at Texas A&M, as bad as it is, this is not Jimbo. What's happening right now is not Jimbo Fisher's fault. Well, what's happening is Jimbo Fisher's fault. But the predicament that Texas A&M finds themselves in right now is not Jimbo Fisher's fault. Again, I feel like I'm saying this week after week with Texas A&M, but hell, if you're tired of hearing me talk about it, Texas A&M, then start winning some fucking games. You've lost, 6, 7 games in a row? You're a goddamn joke at this point. You're the laughingstock of college football. This is Texas A&M's fault, the university. They never should have given Jimbo that contract last September. They gave Jimbo this ridiculous contract last September, $9-10 million a year. That's not the worst part about it, okay? You've got money, you want to pay some idiot $10 million to coach you to an 8-4 season in a good year, a 3-9 season in a bad year, fine. Light the money on fire and send it his way. I don't care. Where you screwed up was guaranteeing that over a 10-year period. That's where you screwed up because you can't afford to fire this guy. And look, I'll believe it when I see it. All these stories about Texas A&M boosters are going to pull together $95 million to pay his buyout. I don't see that happening. Do you have any idea how much money that is? Schools struggle to pay $15, $20, $25 million buyouts. Do you know the financial hole that will put Texas A&M in if they shell out $90 million to get rid of Jimbo Fisher? Of course he should be fired. He's horrendous. He's horrendous. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't think anybody's forking over that kind of money to get rid of a college football coach. I just don't believe it. I've been wrong before. Maybe I'll be wrong again. But to the cadets, to the college football G.I. Joes out there in College Station, Jimbo Fisher's going to be your coach next year. So I suggest you find a way to deal with it. And wearing ROTC uniforms that are 2 sizes too small with a silly-ass crew cut that an 8-year-old would be embarrassed to wear, twirling around a wooden gun at yell practice, you can do all that shit till the cows come home. It's not going to make Jimbo Fisher a good head coach. He's fallen on his face. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to Texas A&M to have this kind of a record. It's an embarrassment at Texas A&M that they have put themselves in this hole with this contract. It's embarrassing that you lost 13-10. 10 points you scored on Auburn. And Jimbo Fisher's an offensive guy, and that might be the worst part of it all. Texas A&M's defense is not horrible. Now, you can argue it should be playing a little better than it is, okay, and there's been a few games maybe they gave up too many points, but if you're trying to pinpoint one, the biggest area of concern on Texas A&M, it's offense, and that's Jimbo Fisher's offense. That's why you hire Jimbo Fisher. So if you take away the offensive play calling from Jimbo, if you force Jimbo to go out and hire an offensive coordinator for $2, $3, $4 million a year, then what do you need Jimbo for? He's not there because he runs a great program. He's there because you wanted his offense, and his offense is failing in 2022. It's outdated. It's slow. It's not innovative at all. It doesn't put nearly enough of an emphasis on getting your most talented players the ball. Walking around on the sideline with 448 pieces of loose leaf paper, fumbling them around, asking your quarterback to basically memorize an encyclopedia's worth of useless and pointless information doesn't appear to be working in 2022. It doesn't. Look at Tennessee. Tennessee's playbook, you could fit Tennessee's playbook on the back of this Bluetooth coaster. Hurry to the ball, snap it as quick as you can. Run a go route unless the corner is playing soft coverage. If they are, run an 8-yard curl. That's it. That's Tennessee's playbook. Gimmick fucking offense. But it sure is working better than Texas A&M's 448-page manifesto on how to run a college football offense. Ain't it, Jimbo? Yeah, it is. Texas A&M's a disaster. I predict they'll be a disaster next year. I predict they're going to lose a bunch of people to the transfer portal in the offseason. I predict this coming recruiting class that signs in December and February is going to be nowhere near, not even in the same universe as last year's recruiting class. And I predict that we're not too far away from being at a point where instead of Texas A&M fans complaining that they're going 8-4 every year, they're going to be on their hands and knees worshiping their G.I. Joe figures, praying for an 8-4 season. That's my prediction. Texas A&M, your season's been over. You're a dead program. Sorry. It is what it is. Speaking of teams that aren't any good, NC State. Look, this surprises no one. Now, I guess I'm a little surprised NC State lost to Boston College. No, I wrote that down wrong. Nope, yep, they lost to Boston College 21-20. I guess I'm a little bit surprised. I ranted and raved all week long about the rankings having NC State at 16. It was insane. It was insane 2 weeks ago when they had Clemson at 4. I ranted all week about it. Clemson went out and got blown out by Notre Dame. This week, they put NC State at 16. There ain't a soul on planet Earth that's watched more than 5 minutes of college football this year that thinks NC State is anywhere close to being the 16th best team in the country. They're not even good. They're not even good. Never mind this one of the 16 best. Not even close. Boston College beat them yesterday. That improves Boston College's record to 3-7. They were a 2-win team before they beat the Wolfpack yesterday. Hey, Dave, how you doing? Dave Duren, head coach over there. Oh, but the quarterback is hurt. It's Boston fucking College. What happened to that defense you were supposed to have? It was all world. You know, NC State is inching ever closer to becoming one of these teams that next year's the year every single year. It seems like every offseason we got to read a bunch of articles and listen to a bunch of talking heads tell us about how this is the year NC State's going to put it together, finally beat Clemson, win the conference, and compete for a playoff spot. We've been hearing that every single year. And all they do is come out and win like 9 games once every 4 years, then they go back to oblivion. This is terrible for NC State, but not shocking. Again, I picked Boston College to cover. I think NC State was like a 16 or a 17-point favorite. I don't think NC State's 16 or 17 points better than anybody in the country. I don't care how bad Boston College is. And not only did Boston College cover, they came out and won the game. The ACC has 2 good teams. 2. Clemson and North Carolina. I didn't say great. I didn't say really good. But they are good, okay? They're 9-1. Okay, you don't get to be 9-1 if you're terrible. So they're not, are Clemson and North Carolina terrible? No. Are they great? No. They're good teams. They're the only 2 good teams in the ACC. That's it. Maybe Florida State. In fact, you probably could throw Florida State in there. They won big again yesterday against Syracuse, another fraud that was forced down our throats halfway through the season because they were 5-0 or 6-0, whatever it was, beating up on a bunch of dumpster juice ACC teams, and the media tries to force feed you mushed peas like baby food and tell you to think that Syracuse is good. They're not good. They lost, their 3rd, 4th game in a row yesterday. But anyway, back to NC State. So these teams aren't any good. You got Clemson and NC State at 9-1. Okay, good. Florida State's 6-3, 7-3, whatever they are. I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt and put them as good. No one else is good. Look, listen, Wake Forest is not a good team. I'm sick of hearing about Sam Hartman and the offense, and oh my God, look at the style of offense they run. It's so innovative. It's a cross between this and this. It's a cross between 2 different piles of doo-doo. That's what it is. Wake Forest is not any good. NC State's not any good. Syracuse, not any good. Pitt, not any good. Miami, not any good. Georgia Tech, not any good. Virginia Tech, not any good. Duke, on down the fucking list. None of these teams are any good. Forget great. They're not even good. The ACC is the worst conference in the country, period. I got some mouth-breathing retard in the comments section yesterday going on and on and on about how the ACC's got 9 bowl-eligible teams. Okay, that's not proving shit to Uncle Lou. Are you trying to tell me that 6 wins makes you good? The fuck is wrong with you? Have you ever watched any bowl games? The bowl season, the first 2-3 weeks of December, the bowl season is filled with a bunch of terrible fucking teams. And this year it's going to be filled with a bunch of terrible fucking teams from the ACC that fucked around, reached around, jacked them own selves off, and ended up with a bunch of 6 and 7 win teams that aren't any good. Oh, well, if the ACC's so bad, why do you got 9 bowl? Well, okay, so they got a bunch of six wins. It's not good. You jackleg. Jesus. Y'all gonna have me in the video again. Can y'all hit the thumbs up or no? Hit the thumbs up, please. We've only done a couple of teams and y'all got me in here. I need to calm the fuck down. I hope my heart doctor's not watching this. Speaking of not any good, the SEC West is a steaming pile too, ain't it? Yes. And again, in the comments, oh, if the SEC West is so bad, Lou, then why did the SEC West win the SEC title a bunch of years in a row a long time ago? Because we're not currently living in a long time ago. God, what part of this shit don't y'all understand? The SEC West is not good now. Okay? That statement doesn't have anything to do with last year, the year before, nothing. I'm talking about right now. There's not a great team in the SEC West. Why does that make you so fucking mad? Ole Miss sitting here at 1 loss and went out and lose to Alabama. Worst Alabama team in over a decade. LSU loses to Florida State. They get absolutely ran out of their own building by Tennessee. Lost by 30 points or whatever it was at home to the Voltards. Auburn and Texas A&M were barely Power 5 programs at this point. Arkansas lost to Liberty last week. And then you got the 2 Mississippi schools who both took giant dumps yesterday. The SEC West just isn't any good. But why is that? What does that have to do with 5 or 10 years ago? I don't get it. I don't understand. That tells me you agree with me. When I say the SEC West isn't any good this year, and you start blabbering in the comments section about 2016 or 2017 or 2019, that tells me I'm right and you're agreeing with me. Because you're not doing anything to dispute the facts I'm laying out in front of you, which is that the SEC West is not that good this year, and the SEC East is just clearly better. Why does that make you so mad? I don't understand. I don't get it. But Ole Miss, yep, you lost. Lane Kiffin lost to his daddy yet again. Nick Saban bends him over his knee and spanks his little bottom blue on TV in front of God, Jesus, baby Jesus, and everybody else. What was the score of this disaster? 30-24. It was actually a great game to watch. I thought that fumble that Ole Miss had, was that towards the end of the second quarter? I guess initially it wasn't ruled a fumble, and they reviewed it, and it was reviewed a fumble. First of all, it was a fumble, but I thought that was the biggest play of the game. Zach Evans got hurt on that play, was unable to return. All the momentum went to Alabama because they got the ball back, went down and scored. I thought that was a pretty big play. And as good as Judkins is, the other running back for Ole Miss, without Zach Evans, Judkins just wasn't enough. That last drive, he had that big run. The Ole Miss running back had that big run. Ole Miss had a chance to win the game at the end. They were down 6. They get the ball back. That freshman running back, Judkins, had a huge run down to the 30 or 35-yard line. But then Ole Miss had to throw the ball because Judkins was just gassed. He was wore out. I mean, you could see it. If you go back and watch a couple of plays in a row after that big run that are pass plays, Judkins isn't even doing anything. He can barely stand up. He's just wore out. He'd been playing the entire second half, basically, because Zach Evans had been hurt. He has that big run. Ole Miss can't call a timeout because they're trying to save their last one, that kind of thing. So they choose to throw the ball down there at the end, and unfortunately, Ole Miss is just not a very good throwing team this year. Jackson Dart, as good as he is with the RPOs and the read options and the zone reads and stuff like that with getting the running backs the ball, in obvious passing situations, Ole Miss just really hasn't been a threat this year. Mingo's a good wide receiver, But, Jackson Dart, first-year starter, it hasn't been a great year throwing the ball for Ole Miss. So when they get in that situation down at the end, there's been a lot of second-guessing. Why didn't they run the ball? The guy was clearly gassed. So I don't even necessarily blame Kiffin for calling passing plays there. Now, Jackson Dart can't take that sack. Was it that third down play? It was 3rd and 5 or something from around the 10-yard line. And he holds onto the ball a little too long, takes like a 10-yard sack. Now it's 4th and 16. Last play, last-ditch effort deal. They throw a post into the end zone. Good coverage by Bama. Knocked down, basically game over at that point. But Ole Miss was sitting on 1 loss. Now they got 2. So does Bama. So do the Corn Dogs. But the Corn Dogs, of course, win the West. They beat Arkansas yesterday. Barely. I mean barely. In a bad Arkansas team. Is Liberty better than LSU? It's pretty close, isn't it? It's pretty close, isn't it? Liberty beat LSU 21-19 last week. Liberty beat Arkansas 21-19 last week. What'd you do? You beat Arkansas 13-10. KJ Jefferson at least played last week against Liberty most of the game. He got hurt and they took him out. KJ Jefferson didn't play at all in this game. Arkansas is just horrendous without KJ Jefferson. You beat them 13-10. Not only did KJ Jefferson not play, the backup got hurt, and they had to put their 3rd-string quarterback in the game. You beat them 13-10. Jaden Daniels. Look, Jaden Daniels has had some good games this year, particularly running the ball, extending some plays and extending some drives. I'm not going to take anything away from Jaden Daniels. He's had some games where he's basically won the game for LSU. He passed for 80 yards yesterday. 80 in 2022 against Arkansas. I don't know what's going on with LSU. Here's the thing. Is LSU the best team in the West? Yeah. They beat Bama. They earned their right to the SEC title game, right? They beat Bama and they beat Ole Miss, right? So, they've earned it. They've earned it. Their only losses are to an average Florida State team and a 30-something point blowout at home to Tennessee. And Tennessee's an SEC East team, so of course they beat LSU. Any SEC East team worth their salt is going to beat LSU. Let's just call it like it is. LSU's not, is LSU the best team in the West? Yes. What are they in the East? The 4th? What would they be, like the 4th best team in the East, maybe? 3rd or 4th. Give them the benefit of the doubt, 3rd or 4th. Just not very good. You got, that linebacker is good, Perkins. Man, too bad you don't have like 7 or 8 more of them. Then you'd have a legitimate defense like some other teams I know, like Georgia. But yeah, Perkins is good. But LSU gets the win over Arkansas, but barely. Ole Miss loses to Alabama. Therefore, LSU clinches the SEC West and earns the right to show up in Athens in a couple of weeks and get Athens. Might as well be Athens. Hell, we could play on the moon. It wouldn't matter. But you earn the right to show up in Atlanta in a couple of weeks and get your asshole exploded in the SEC title game by UGA. Congratulations. You have absolutely no chance to win that game. Georgia's going to be somewhere, if I had to guess, I'd say Georgia's going to be somewhere between a 14 and a 17-point favorite. Georgia's going to win the game by 3+ scores. That's what's going to happen. You can't compete with Georgia. You can't. You don't have the Jimmies and the Joes. You're not good enough. Jaden Daniels isn't good enough throwing the ball to beat Georgia. He's not. As far as his ability to run around, over half the teams we played this year can run around like Jaden Daniels, but not against Georgia. Sorry. And you won't be able to run the ball against Georgia either. Why? No one runs the ball on Georgia. Period. You can't find a game in the last 3-4 years where somebody ran the ball on Georgia. Another one with old-ass comments. Oh, what happened the last time you played LSU? Already in the comments yesterday. Last time you played LSU, they whooped you. Good luck. What does that have to do with anything? What's wrong with you? Last time you played Alabama, you lost. This year you won. Apparently what happened last year or 2 years ago or 10 years ago doesn't matter. I don't understand people, man. Y'all are weird. Y'all are weird. Congratulations to LSU for winning the division in Brian Kelly's first year. And let me go ahead and congratulate Brian Kelly ahead of time. He's about to be 0-3 versus Georgia. Whee! Brian Kelly about to be 0-3 versus Georgia. Google that. Google that if you want to. Mississippi State with this damn cowbell. Another aggravator here. Another aggravator. I don't understand. Why is Mississippi State the only school in the country that's allowed, where fans are allowed to bring artificial noisemakers into the game? Doesn't make any sense. What kind of dumbass, inbred, hillbilly, backwoods, hick motherfuckers just carry cowbells around with them at random in case they accidentally stumble into a Mississippi State game? And let's be real, that's the only reason anybody would be at a Mississippi State game, accidentally stumbling into it. There's no reason you would purposely make plans to attend a Mississippi State game. They're not any good. I'd rather attend a Mike Leach press conference than I would a Mississippi State game. The press conferences are at least interesting and entertaining. There's nothing interesting or entertaining about watching noodle arm Will Rogers throw the ball 50 times for 3 yards per completion. There's just nothing interesting in that at all. The only reason I even watched it is because Georgia was playing. That's it. Okay, about Mississippi State. Bring Mike Leach in. It's a fucking sideshow. Having Mike Leach in the SEC is no different than having a bearded lady at the circus. It's a fucking sideshow. It's a freak show. It's just a distraction. That's all it is. That's all it is. And the only place Mike Leach would ever have a chance of getting hired in a league like the SEC is Mississippi State, a team that needs any and all extra attention it can get. Because there ain't nobody in their right mind calling up Delta and booking a flight to Starkville. Not a recruit, not a reporter, not a TV show, nothing. Nobody. Nobody. Starkville. God almighty. It's like the place that time forgot out there, the entire state of Mississippi. But anyway, Mississippi State lost, got absolutely blown out by Georgia. What was it, 45-19? Or scores start to run together after a while when you're a Georgia fan. You beat everybody you play by fucking 40 and 50 points. 45-19. And 7 of those points were a punt return. So once again, Georgia's defense just completely shuts down an opposing team's offense. There's just nothing you can do. Mike Leach, oh my God, the Bigfoot offense. You better be careful. Hey, listen. I picked, in the offseason when I do my prediction videos, I picked Georgia to go 11-1 with a loss on the road at Mississippi State. Why did I pick Georgia to lose that game? Unfamiliar environment. I figured it was likely to be a night game this late in the season because I knew Mississippi State wasn't going to be any good. Therefore, it wasn't going to be a 3:30 CBS game. I figured it would be a night game. I was right about those things. Unfamiliar environment, road game at night against a team that likes to throw the ball. That's why I picked Georgia to lose that game. The problem, and where I went wrong, I didn't expect Mississippi State to be this fucking bad, but it turns out they are, and Georgia went in there and handled business without a problem. And what's sad, boy, reality comes at you fast, doesn't it? You know who played a better game yesterday between Mississippi State and Georgia? Mississippi State. Mississippi State played a better game. Georgia turned it over multiple times. Stetson Bennett had 2 interceptions. We fumbled twice. Now, luckily, we jumped on it both times. Didn't actually lose either of those. But so 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles. Could have gone the other way. We gave up a special teams touchdown. All kinds of penalties. Didn't run the ball very well in the first half. And beat you by 26 fucking points in your own backyard at night. That's how good Georgia is. That's how good Georgia is. They are just that good. But Mississippi State, yes, you played a better game than Georgia and lost 45-19. I guess you can put that on your tombstone because your season is over. Brent Venables. You know what? One of my favorite things to do lately, every Saturday during these games, keep an eye on Brent Venables and Mario Cristobal. It's been like a contest between Mario Cristobal at Miami and Brent Venables at Oklahoma on who can have a worse season, who can disappoint the most, who can underachieve the most, who can fall furthest away from relevancy. The winner this week, Oklahoma and Brent Venables. That's right, Oklahoma. Not only did you lose this week, you lost to West by God, Virginia, a team that has never, I repeat, a team that has never in its history beaten Oklahoma. Brent Venables says, hold my dip cup. He goes up to Morgantown and totes a giant friggin' L to West Virginia. A game where West Virginia played so bad, they benched JT Daniels Christ and still beat you. Humiliating. Worst West Virginia team I've seen in a long, long time. Didn't matter. They beat you 23-20. West Virginia improves to 4-6 on the season. That's right. If West Virginia wins their next 2 games, they're going bowling. They're a 4-win team, but they beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma, you're 5-5. You need to win one of your next 2 games to go bowling. Can you do it? Can Miami make a bowl with Mario Cristobal? Can Oklahoma make a bowl with Brent Venables? Man, if I'd have told you in the offseason that a week or so before Thanksgiving, Miami and Oklahoma's bowl eligibility would be up in the air, you'd have called me a lunatic. Or worse. Boy, these are 2 terrible teams, aren't they? Who's in better shape in the long run, you think, though? Oklahoma with Brent Venables or Miami with Mario Cristobal? Miami with Mario Cristobal. For one, they're in the ACC. For 2, Mario Cristobal, even if there are legitimate questions and concerns about his actual coaching ability, like in-game coaching ability and maybe even some development questions, there are no questions about his recruiting ability as a head coach. We all know that. With Brent Venables, you don't know what the hell you're getting. All you know for a fact right now about Brent Venables as a head coach is that he's got a 500 record. That's it. You don't know how he's going to recruit as a head coach. Plus, Miami is in the ACC. And they're going to be in the ACC next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. Oklahoma is getting ready to join the big leagues. Oklahoma's getting ready to come into the SEC. They lost to Virginia. This is like losing to Vandy. You listening, Kentucky, man? Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC, their first couple of years is going to be so much fun, isn't it? You know those fans wish they could back it out. You know they do. There ain't a Texas or an Oklahoma fan on earth that's excited about coming to the SEC because they know what's about to happen. Oklahoma, your season's been over for a while. I don't know what to make of Brent Venables long term. I don't believe in firing a coach in the first year unless there's some kind of off-the-field issue that leaves you with no choice. But as far as just losing games goes, I don't believe in firing a coach in the first year. So Brent Venables is not going to be fired. He should be given a couple of years, right? Try to maybe turn the roster over, whatever. Smart people knew Oklahoma was going to struggle this year, like me. Idiot Oklahoma Homer fans. You know, what was my prediction? I think I predicted Oklahoma to go 8-4. Oh my God, I got jumped on. Oh yeah, this guy's an idiot. He just hates Oklahoma. Doesn't know what he's talking about. We're winning the Big 12. Sir, lady, whatever. You had no defense to start with. Your entire offense transferred out, and you brought in a defensive head coach to work with what? Brent Venables could be the greatest defensive mind in the history of man. He wasn't about to make anything out of what was left over on that roster at Oklahoma, and guess what? Turns out he didn't. And the offense not very good either. So, you got to give him a chance to get some people in there. But there's no sugarcoating the disaster that has been the Oklahoma season. It's just been a disaster by any measure or standard. Even people who were concerned about Oklahoma heading into the season and how Brent Venables would do year one with no defensive talent and an offense that transferred out, like me. 8 wins. Nobody saw this. 5-5, lost to West Virginia. Horrible, disastrous season in Norman, Oklahoma. Your season's over. Oh, boy. UCLA. You know what? The Pac-12 is starting to develop a reputation. Well, they've had a reputation. The reputation is they don't make the playoffs. But they're starting to develop an even more, what's the word? I don't know what the word is. Doesn't really matter. There's a lot of years where the Pac-12 has a team, or in this case, multiple teams, with legitimate playoff shots in the last couple of weeks of the season, and then go out and lose totally unlosable games. UCLA did it yesterday. UCLA, love them, hate them, whatever. They've been sitting on just the one loss, and that one loss was to Oregon. Don't worry. We'll get to the Oregon thing in a minute. You lost to Arizona. Now, this is bad. Both the Arizona schools are terrible. I don't care what anybody has to say about Arizona. They're not any good. You lost 34-28. You did have a chance at the end to win an incomplete pass in the end zone, but it shouldn't have come down to that. Should not have come down to that. Oregon did this a couple of years ago to Arizona, I believe, or it was either Arizona or Arizona State. Oregon only had one loss. They were in the top 4 in the playoff polls that were coming out. All they had to do was beat a couple of bad teams, and they were in. The Pac-12 made them play on a Friday night down in Arizona somewhere, and they lost, and that was it. Pac-12 was out of the playoffs. UCLA, Southern Cal, and Oregon went into yesterday all with playoff chances. Now, some of the outside chances maybe, but still, all with just one loss, all with still a chance to win the Pac-12 with just the one loss. They'd be a 12-1 Power 5 champion. They'd have at least an argument to make about why they should be included in the playoffs. 2 of the 3 go out and lose yesterday. Oregon at least lost to a decent team. Washington, they're ranked. They're 8-2. Arizona's a train wreck and a disaster. And Chip Kelly went down there and completely shit all over his own foot. It's just embarrassing. No excuse for it. You lost 34-28. We might as well keep it going and just go right on to Oregon here. Coaching malpractice. Now, I love Dan Lanning. I'm a fan of Dan Lanning. I loved him at UJ as defensive coordinator. And look, when these former coaches from UJ go off and get an opportunity as a head coach, I don't root against them. I mean, if they play Georgia, of course I want to beat them. But, I would like to see Mel Tucker do well. I'd like to see Dan Lanning do well. I'd like to see Sam Pittman do well, these coaches who have come out from up under Kirby and have head coaching jobs. Now, of course, I'd like to see that. This was coaching malpractice yesterday in this Oregon game. Oregon had the ball with like a minute to go on their own 30-yard line, and they went for it on 4th and 1. The game was tied. What are you doing? Horrible. With a backup quarterback in the game. Bo Nix had got hurt and wasn't playing. So you have a backup quarterback in, 4th and 1, under a minute to go. On your own 30, 35-yard line, 4th and 2, whatever it was. You got to kick that thing away. You got to kick that thing away and force Washington to go 50, 60, 70 yards to attempt a game-winning field goal. You can't go for it right there on 4th and 1. Even if you get it on 4th and 1, you're still 40 yards away from attempting a field goal. It just made no sense. You've got to punt that ball away. Oregon goes for it. They don't get it. Washington takes over already in field goal range. They kick a field goal, game over. I mean, Oregon did get the ball back with 20 seconds and no timeouts or whatever, but there's not enough time. And Oregon loses the game and costs themselves a shot at the college football playoffs. Now, they're still alive for the Pac-12, as is UCLA. But them losing not only hurts their chances of making the playoffs, it now hurts the entire Pac-12 as a whole. The only remaining team in the Pac-12 with any playoff hopes at all is Southern Cal. Southern Cal is sitting there with just one loss. That one loss is to Utah. Utah only has 2 losses and is ranked in the top 15. So Southern Cal's a one-loss Power 5 team. The one loss is to a top 15 team. Well, Utah's got to play Oregon this week. What if Utah loses? Then that Southern Cal win doesn't look so good. Whether Oregon wins or loses or not, Southern Cal in the Pac-12 title game would love to have played 11-1 Oregon or an 11-1 UCLA or whoever, right? Not now. You're going to play a 2-loss team in the Pac-12 title game. The good news for Southern Cal, their next 2 games are against Notre Dame and UCLA. It does hurt that UCLA just lost, but UCLA's not going to fall out of the rankings. They're an 8-2 team. They're 8-2. They're not going to fall out of the rankings. They're going to still be ranked. It won't be as impressive of a win for Southern Cal if Southern Cal beats them as it would have been had UCLA handled business at Arizona, but it'll still be a ranked win. And then Notre Dame is also ranked. So if Southern Cal beats Notre Dame, that will be 2 ranked wins for Southern Cal to close out the regular season. Then they're going to have the Pac-12 title game. And whoever they play in that Pac-12 title game needs to have no more than 2 losses. It needs to be a 2-loss Oregon. Southern Cal needs Oregon to win out and have just 2 losses, 1 to Georgia, 1 to Washington. That both Oregon's losses in that case would be to ranked teams. Southern Cal then would need to beat Oregon convincingly. That would put Southern Cal at 12-1 with a Pac-12 title, with wins over a ranked Notre Dame, a ranked UCLA, in this case a ranked Oregon, if that's who they play in the Pac-12 title game. All of those ranked wins would have come over the last 3 weeks of the season, 3 in a row. Would that be enough to vault Southern Cal into the playoffs? Again, it's going to depend what happens in the other conferences. So you got to assume an SEC team and a Big Ten team is getting in. That's 2 spots gone. If TCU runs the table, that's 3 spots gone. That leaves 1 spot left for either an 11-1 Tennessee with no division title, no conference title, right? The loser of the Michigan-Ohio State game, who's going to be 11-1 with no division title, no conference title. A possible 12-1 Clemson with an ACC title. And then Southern Cal. It's going to be if TCU runs the table. I think the playoff committee is secretly hoping for TCU to lose a game. Because if TCU runs the table and they're 13-0, they're getting in. And that's 3 teams gone. That's going to leave the playoff committee with one hell of a decision to make. Let's say all the favorites win, okay? If the favorites win, then Georgia ends up winning the SEC 13-0, they're in. Ohio State wins the Big Ten 13-0, they're in. TCU wins the Big 12 13-0, they're in. That's 3 spots gone. You got 1 spot remaining and a bunch of teams arguing over it. Tennessee 11-1, no division, no conference. Michigan 11-1, no division, no conference. I think Tennessee would get the nod over Michigan. Michigan's non-conference schedule is going to come back to bite it if they lose to Ohio State. It's the worst non-conference schedule of any top 10 team in the country. So throw them out. So then you're at an 11-1 Tennessee, no division title, no conference title against, let's say, a 12-1 Clemson. Boy, it'd be hard to keep Clemson out. It would be hard to keep Clemson out in that scenario. 12-1 Southern Cal with a Pac-12 title. Hard to keep them out. Over an 11. So a lot of Tennessee fans are excited. And look, one of the things you needed to happen yesterday happened. Oregon lost. You probably need another thing or two to happen. You need either TCU to lose. You need maybe North Carolina to win the ACC instead of Clemson. You need maybe a 2-loss Pac-12 champion. I still think the odds are over 50% that Tennessee gets in the playoffs. But that's taking into account that there are some other teams that are going to need to lose, I think. I don't think Tennessee would get in over a 12-1 Southern Cal. I don't. I really, really don't. But we'll see. We'll see. Who else lost? That's it for the helmets, but don't worry. I got a few more losers on here. Copious notes in that. Tulane lost. Not the Green Wave. Man, that hurts my feelings. Tulane lost to Central Florida 38-31. Nobody really wants to be the best Group of 5 team this year, do they? Liberty lost yesterday after beating Arkansas. Tulane lost. They were the highest ranked Group of 5 team, I think. Central Florida's also ranked, but they got the same record as Cincinnati. It's just a mess in the Group of 5 this year trying to figure out who the best team is. I think we can all agree, though, the reality is there's not a great Group of 5 team this year. There's not a 2017 Central Florida. There's not a 2020 or a 2021 Cincinnati this year in the Group of 5. There's a lot of good teams. These teams are good. Look, Tulane is good. Cincinnati is good. Central Florida is good. James Madison, you can name a lot of teams. A lot of these teams are good. This isn't one of those years where we're like, oh, Group of 5's getting screwed. There's not a Group of 5 playoff team. Come on, we all know that this year. Everybody's got to know that now. Illinois, what is going on with the Big Ten West? We're going to talk about the Big Ten West in a second. It's an absolute mess. Try to guess who's going to win the Big Ten West. Not a single team has over a 50% chance of winning the Big Ten West at this point. There's 7 teams in the Big Ten West. 5 of them still have a chance to win it. None of them have over a 50% chance to win it, but I'm going to tell you who's favored to win it in a minute, but Illinois lost again. Illinois and Syracuse are the same team with different helmets on. Neither one of them are any good. Both of them started out 4-0, 5-0, 5-1, whatever it was. The media tried to bully you into thinking they were good. They're not good. They're not good. And they lost again this weekend, Illinois did, to Purdue. Again, the SEC West and the Big Ten West are pretty much indistinguishable from each other. Just 2 divisions that aren't any good. Kentucky lost, and that's not funny. Kentucky loses a lot. They lost to Vandy. Shout out to Vandy. I know this is a video where we make fun of losers. I could not let this video go by without giving a big shout out to Clark Lee, head coach at Vandy, and the Vandy Commodores, their first SEC win in like 3 years or whatever it is, 4 years, whatever it is. Absolutely unbelievable. Shout out to Vandy. And man, Kentucky, what happened? You got caught looking ahead? For what? What are you looking ahead for? Kentucky, man, what are you doing? You're looking ahead to a beating? Georgia plays Kentucky next week. Man, the Kentucky fans have disappeared off the internet, hadn't they? Yeah, they have. 2 months ago, first month of the season, especially after Kentucky beat Florida, my comment section was littered with ignorant Kentucky basketball fans pretending to understand football. Oh, you worried about that game in November, ain't you, woo? You know, winner of that game in November, woo, is going to win the East, woo. It's going to come down to Georgia and Kentucky for the East, woo. You ain't even making a bowl game, are you? How'd you lose to South Carolina? I wish you'd keep Georgia and Uncle Lou's name out your mouth. No, I'm just kidding. Continue to type. It's entertaining. Gives me something to laugh at and something to talk about on these videos, too. Yeah, keep up the good work. Georgia Tech lost to Miami 35-14 in the Who Gives a Shit Bowl. These might be the two worst teams in the country, not named Colorado, Georgia Tech and Miami, but Georgia Tech's so bad. And you got to be bad. You got to be bad to lose to Miami by even 1 point. But imagine losing 35-14. Kentucky, humiliated by Vandy yesterday. One of the worst teams in the country. Georgia Tech, humiliated by Miami. One of the worst teams in the country. Guess who these two dudders... Look at this. This is Georgia's next two games. Kentucky and Vandy and Kentucky and Georgia Tech. Georgia plays Kentucky this week, Georgia Tech the following week. What do you think the combined score of those two games is going to be? Let me know in the comments down below. What's the combined score going to be? Georgia plays at Kentucky and then home against Georgia Tech. What's the combined score of those two games going to be? I'm going to say Georgia gets to triple digits. I'm going to say Georgia hits triple digits combined between those two games, and that combined those other two teams don't even score 20 points. So I'll say Georgia 102, Kentucky and Georgia Tech 17. There you go. That's Uncle Lou's prediction for Georgia's next two games. Congratulations again to Vandy. Yeah, but Kentucky and Miami are still hot doo-doo, as is Georgia Tech. South Carolina got absolutely destroyed by Florida. And look, this was one of those no-lose situations for Uncle Lou, right? I'm a Georgia fan. I have to hate Florida. I love it every time they lose. It's fun to point and laugh. And yeah, Sunbelt Billy's in over his head, and he still doesn't know what he's doing. But South Carolina's just that bad. But this was a no-win situation for me. I made two bets in the offseason involving South Carolina this year and their win total, how many games South Carolina would win. Because I made a lot of comments in the offseason about South Carolina where I would say, you know, I think South Carolina fans need to temper their expectations in terms of a record. I think South Carolina might be a better team in 2022 than they were in 2021, but I think their record might be worse because their schedule's tough, right? I had two people argue with me, and they wanted to make bets on the South Carolina win total for this year. The first person said South Carolina was going to win more than 8 games. I jumped on that bet so quick it made everybody's head spin. I just didn't think there was any way South Carolina was going to get more than 8 wins. So I'm obviously winning that bet because South Carolina's at 6 wins right now. They're 6-4. They're not getting to 8. Their next 2 games are against Tennessee and Clemson. They're going to lose their next 2 games. I wasn't worried about that bet. But I had a second bet where I had South Carolina under 6.5 wins, meaning South Carolina had to only win 6 games or less. If South Carolina won 7 games or more, I would lose the bet. Well, going into this last stretch of games for South Carolina, the Florida game was the only one that was concerning me. You know, South Carolina's at 6 wins. Their last 3 games were yesterday against Florida, and then Tennessee and Clemson, like I mentioned. Tennessee and Clemson are going to roll them like a fucking Swiss cake roll. I'm not worried about that. The Florida game was the best chance Carolina had of winning one of the last 3, and they got blown out yesterday by a terrible Sunbelt Billy team, 38-6. So shout out to South Carolina for shitting themselves again. And I guess Florida's back now. So congratulations to them too. All right, here's what's left to talk about. Some teams that won and looked good, some teams that won and looked bad. I want to talk about the Big Ten West for a second, the Pac-12 for a second, and then we'll do the Heisman list and the best teams, and we'll wrap it up. Who looked good yesterday? Southern Cal looked good. 55-17 over Colorado. Southern Cal, I think, is now the fly in the ointment when it comes to the playoff. TCU is probably going to go 13-0 at this point. Texas was their toughest hurdle, so we'll see what happens with Southern Cal. We talked about that already. UJ looked good, 45-19 over Mississippi State. They were favored by 16.5. They won by, 26? Covered the spread. Michigan looked good. They beat Nebraska 34-3, proving that just because Nebraska is a 3-win team doesn't mean you have to struggle with them. Right, Ohio State? It is possible to beat a 3-win team convincingly. Ohio State, man. Ohio State is still running around trying to tell people Nebraska was good last year. It's just the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing. TCU, 17-10 over Texas. You say it's only 7 points. I say they were a 7-point underdog. So, yeah, that's a good win. If you're a 7-point underdog and you win by any amount, that's a good win. Shout out to TCU. Tennessee won 66-24 over Mizzou. Bama won 30-24 over Ole Miss. How's that a good win, Lou? They were favored by 11.5. Well, it doesn't matter to me. When it comes to Bama, they get juiced up in Vegas because people are stupid and they just betting on the name Bama. Bama's a terrible team. Any win Bama gets is good, no matter who it's against at this point. So shout out to Bama. You won 30-24. Clemson beat Louisville 31-16 after getting absolutely embarrassed by Rudy in Notre Dame last week on the road at South Bend. Shout out to them. Will Shipley had one of those highlight-type hurdle plays, too, where he scored a touchdown. Check that out on YouTube or SportsCenter if you hadn't seen it. Utah destroyed Stanford 42-7. Penn State 30-0 over Maryland. Damn. I picked Maryland in the offseason. I said Maryland's not going to be very good, but I think they're going to beat one of the big three in the Big Ten between Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. God. And Penn State beat them 30-0. Doesn't look like that's what's going to happen. Oh, well, it is what it is. Florida State continues to roll 38-3 over the Fruit, a terrible Syracuse team. Vandy, we already talked about them. Any win they get, again, is a great win. Same with Miami. Good win. Miami wins by 1 point. It's a good win. Doesn't matter who they're playing. So shout out to those teams. They won and looked good. Who won and looked bad? LSU 13-10 over Arkansas. Just terrible. Corn dogs, and that's not very good. The SEC West is an amalgamation of average teams. Somebody has to float to the top, right? And that's somebody this year's LSU. North Carolina 36-34 over Wake Forest. What is going on? Notre Dame 35-32 over Navy. Notre Dame was up huge in this game at halftime. Came out in the second half, couldn't get a fucking first down. Notre Dame didn't score a single point in the second half. Let Navy come all the way back 35-32 to where they had to, Notre Dame had to survive an onside kick at the end. Anyway, it is what it is. Heisman list, I've only got, here's the top three. That's usually what they invite to New York. We're getting down to the end. Now, my top three might change every week, but my top three right now, C.J. Stroud, Blake Corum, Drake May. Quarterback, North Carolina. That's my top three in the Heisman today. Could change next week. Big Ten West. There's 7 teams in the Big Ten West. None of them are any good. But just like the SEC West, somebody has to win it. So who's going to win the Big Ten West? Well, 4 teams have the same record. And then there's a 5th team that has that's 1 game worse, but still statistically has a chance to win. Purdue, Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota all have the same conference record. 4-3, I think, something like that. Wisconsin is a game worse, but they still have a chance. The team with the highest percentage chance of winning the Big Ten West right now, Purdue. God. Then Iowa, then Illinois, then Minnesota, then Wisconsin. Who's going to actually win the Big Ten West? I don't have a fucking clue. All of these teams are still playing each other over the next couple of weeks. All I know is that whoever wins it is not any good and is going to get destroyed by either Ohio State or Michigan, either one, in the Big Ten title game. The Pac-12 is a little easier to figure out. Utah plays at Oregon this week. UCLA and Southern Cal play this week. Whoever wins between UCLA and Southern Cal is going to the Pac-12 title game. And if Oregon beats Utah, Oregon will be there to meet them. So my guess for the Pac-12 title game at this point is Southern Cal versus Oregon in the Pac-12 title game, but it's a lot easier to figure out. There you go. That's who won good, won bad, Heisman, Pac-12. Whoa. I left something off here. On the one good list, my bad. I left this off. Completely on accident, I promise you. What is this? 56-14. Ohio State over Indiana. Impressive win. Ohio State was favored by 40. They won by 42. Impressive win for Ohio State. In the rain, in the snow, in the cold, the wind was blowing. Ohio State still came out, dominated, won the game, and covered the spread, and looked really good doing it on both sides of the ball. Now, how is that possible? For a year, over a year, every single time Ohio State loses, struggles, or plays bad, we have been told it's because of the weather. Well, the weather was bad yesterday. Why didn't you struggle? Why didn't you play bad? Why didn't your lines of scrimmage get dominated? I know why. It's because the weather didn't have anything to do with yesterday's game. Just like it didn't have anything to do with the game the week before against Northwestern. And just like it didn't have anything to do last year with the game against Michigan. You know what happened in the Ohio State-Michigan game last year? You got beat by a better team. It's literally that simple. It is that simple. Michigan was a better team than you. You couldn't stop the run last year in week 1 against Oregon when it was 80 degrees and sunny. Week 1, Columbus, Ohio. Google it. 80 degrees and sunny. You couldn't stop the run in week 1 last year. 80 degrees and sunny. The last week of the regular season. 20 degrees, snowing, wind. You couldn't stop the run. You couldn't stop the run in week 1. You couldn't stop the run the last game of the regular season. The weather was completely different in both of those games, yet your performance defensively was the same. Weather doesn't matter. Oregon was better than you last year. Michigan was infinitely better than you last year. Northwestern last week, your lines of scrimmage played bad. It happens. Georgia played bad against Mizzou earlier in the year. Georgia had a hard time running the ball yesterday in the first half. Now, they ended up with 180 rushing and over 5.5 yards per carry. But Georgia didn't struggle to run the ball in the first half yesterday because of Mississippi State's cowbells. Georgia didn't struggle to run the ball in the first half yesterday against Mississippi State because there was an area of low pressure. No. Georgia struggled to run the ball. Listen to what I'm about to tell you, Sucknut Man. Georgia struggled to run the ball yesterday in the first half against Mississippi State because they got dominated on the line of scrimmage. Yeah. Because sometimes that happens. And when it happens, all you can do as a fan is say, you know what? They whipped us on the line of scrimmage in that half. It's easy to do. But for whatever reason, Ohio State is unable to do it. Every single time they struggle, every single time they lose, they're blaming weather. It's too cold. It's too snowy. It's too rainy. It's too wet. It's too windy. I showed you guys the other day the Ohio State fan on Twitter who blamed the wind for their bad performance against Northwestern. Blamed the wind not in that C.J. Stroud couldn't throw the ball in the wind. No. The wind was too loud, is what this Ohio State fan said. The wind was too loud. That was Ohio State's problem. The wind was too loud. It's not all bad news for Ohio State. In fact, I have some breaking news when it comes to Ohio State. In anticipation of their upcoming matchup with Michigan, which is going to be played in Columbus, Ohio, which is up north. Last time I checked, it has been known on occasion to rain and or snow and or be cold and or be windy in Columbus, Ohio, Thanksgiving weekend every year. The chance is always there. I have been informed, I've been told, breaking news. In anticipation of that, Ohio State has made some moves. Now, we've all heard of these head coaches going out and hiring quote-unquote analysts, right? Nick Saban kind of first made this famous. Every time a coach would get fired, Nick Saban would hire him, put him in a broom closet, make him study film 40 hours a week, for $8 an hour, that kind of thing. Now almost every program does it. They've got a bunch of analysts. They're not on-field coaches. They're not even allowed to be on the field during practice or any other time. They're just analysts, right? It's just study shit. Everybody's doing it now. Ohio State's a step ahead. Ohio State is forward thinking. Ohio State is always ahead of the curve. And this is just another example here. But in anticipation of some potential bad weather in their last regular season game of the year at home against the top 2 or 3 Michigan team, Ohio State has upped the ante. Ohio State is out here playing checkers or chess when everyone else is playing checkers. Ohio State has hired not 1 but 2 new analysts, specifically for these last few weeks of the regular season. They're not going to need these analysts for the Big Ten title game or either playoff game. And I'll tell you why in a second. This is just for the last 2 weeks of the regular season, the Michigan game in particular, which is going to be played in Columbus, where, this time of year, it could be cold, wet, rainy, snowy, windy, or some combination of that. They've hired not 1 but 2 top secret analysts that are going to put Ohio State over the edge. If I dragged this out long enough, they have hired none other. I can't even do this with a straight face. They have hired none other than Al Roker and Jim Cantore. That's right. Ohio State has broke the mold. They have put both Al Roker and Jim Cantore on the Ohio State payroll as paid analysts. Listen to me. Ohio State is taking this shit to another fucking level. The weather stands no chance against Jim Cantore and Al Roker. These 2 gentlemen here have been fighting the weather for the better part of their entire lives. Jim Cantore has taken on tornadoes, hurricanes, snowstorms, thunder snow or thunder lightning or whatever he calls it. What does he call it? Snow lightning, snow thunder. Al Roker has been delivering weather to you coast to coast on the Today Show for 40 fucking years. When it comes to the weather, let me tell you something. People say Mother Nature is undefeated. Bullshit. Give me Jim Cantore and Al Roker. Jim Cantore and Al Roker would be favored by 4 touchdowns over any given weather on a neutral field, period. Ohio State is taking this shit to another level. As far as I'm concerned, they're now the favorite to win the whole goddamn thing. Have a great day.